private companies, they're NGOs, and they pay themselves huge salaries, and they give out peanut butter and jelly sandwich and put prison mats out. Now that's not help. That's
Yeah.
theft is what it is. It's theft, and that's what's going on across this country. It's happening in New York City, it's happening in Houston, it's
Yeah.
happening in San Antonio, it happens here in Austin. They're not helping the homeless people. Okay, that's the truth, and that's why nobody stays at the shelters. We all know that.
Yeah.
Would you say it's more dangerous in the shelter than inside outside being homeless?
I would say that people who are desperate are kind of a risk because one, they're emotionally shattered. Okay, they're at their wits ends, and somebody who's living on the edge like that, they do tend to fall. They tend to get upset real easy. And things happen bad real quickly. They get offended real easy. There's no doubt, but when you live like that, when you're forced to live like that, I understand that. Okay,
Nature, nurture.
yeah, I mean, you have to have a level of patience with somebody who has to haul water and clothes and everything on their back. You know,
Joshua, your experience with the homeless shelters, if you want to summarize that for me.
Okay, so my experience was coming in as an auditor. I was a marginalized, victimized class of society. Came in wholly, couldn't use any of my money, couldn't use any connections. I came in strictly as just a person that had nothing to offer. And as a taxpayer, that's who the taxpayer is trying to help out. And just generally took them at face value. It didn't make up any conspiracy theories. It didn't get crazy, and I used logical thought and good faith to go through the process. And through the process, I basically came up with some findings, and they weren't necessarily good. And it seems like at Project Phoenix, we have a pretty good idea of what's going on and where the pitfalls are.
Why would somebody stay outside opposed to being in a shelter?
Well, because so there's an overall so the founding of this system did come is a shoot off of the prison industrial complex. So most of the system is based on punishment. So like when you go in there in your warehouse like a stray dog, it is because they're punishing you because that system was put in place as a punishment at first. Now they've since switched it from being a punishment to now being like some kind of a resource, but they had not changed the actual methodology. So they've so that's really what's going on there. And
And
so people because they feel like they're being punished, they don't want to stay there. They feel like they're doing time. And if you look at the structure, like for example, my personal experience there, I found as a tradesperson, I went in there as a tax-paying tradesperson that needs help. So you cannot get your tools. There's no safe place to keep your tools. If you have to wake up at typically a tradesperson wakes up at 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning to get to work. They don't even have access to your tools, and then and there's they really and if they get stolen, they don't care. So
now you were given a blanket too.
um,
What was your entry process look like?
so the entry process at this particular facility, I will say that they're taking steps in the right direction. Um, and they provide you a bed, a blanket, a pillow,
was
um,
there a private room?
and you get your own room, and you might share it with one maximum two other people. So it's like staying in like a hotel.
Is it? Did they have a time that you could come in and time that you had to leave?
Yes, they did. They did have and that's kind of a thing that was a little um, unorthodox, from my view, is these stringent times that they had, and there's no real basis on on your work schedule or where you had to be, and in treating you like a prisoner, the metal detectors and all that other stuff. And really, what that comes from is like, so you have the homeless industrial complex. It's three issues. You have the veterans, and we're supposed to just take care of them, no questions asked. And the fact that we're not, that's despicable. Then you have the open air asylum that we're running as a country. So those are crazy people. And then there's just the actual homeless. and those might be economic reasons, or so.
Right, yeah.
So by trying to fit all three of those into one policy, it's going to be a failure because you're going to have to go to your lowest common denominator, which is
Which is the crazy people.
which
huh?
is the crazy people, and,
Yeah.
and if you're trying to treat a crazy person and a tradesperson, that's
Right.
not going to work.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's a different. You said it. There's humans are so varied. There's some that are there that have no work experience and really aren't employable, and then there's people like you and I that have a lot of experience, and we're treated at such a as such
At
lower at
that
that low level that
yeah.
it's offensive.
Yeah.
It's downright offensive.
So how do you
And,
think? So now that you've heard our experience, how would you think? How would that sound like to the prison industrial complex?
Shit, living in prison is like living out here, living like homeless. You know what I mean? He said I was in prison for 38 years, and I've been here almost 4 months, and I see people laying on the streets. Like
What age were you first incarcerated?
I got incarcerated and I was 17. I got out when I was 54.
But in prison, they tell you what time to wake up.
In
what
prison,
time to go to
in
bed.
prison, they tell you what time, what you gonna do, and what time you gonna go eat, what time you going to sleep. You don't have to go to sleep, but you got to be in your cell at a certain time.
So the structure was similar between the two.
Identical,
And
I would say.
it's identical. But I hear at least you free, and sometimes,
Yeah, well, they dismiss you in the morning.
like
and
I
you walk
said,
off.
excuse me, like I told Kalen when I first met him, I thought I was gonna be homeless when I came out to the free world on July the 25th. I didn't know where I was gonna stay at, but thank the good Lord that this lady named Denise Clark gave me a roof under my head.
Yep.
So now I got a roof under my head. Sometimes I get frustrated, but I thank the good Lord that if it wasn't for her giving me a roof over my head, I'd be out here sleeping in the streets because
Those
my
good
family got too many kids and problems, and they don't need no more problems. You know what I mean? So I prefer to live where I'm at.
And
I don't like it because I don't like being treated.
Well, one thing I noticed is that people's kind of disillusionment when it comes to like exactly. So he was incarcerated at 17. He was just a kid, and he's in prison that whole time. And when people get out, you forget to like he's gonna be basically like he'd been in a time capsule since
Yes, sir.
all that time ago. So it takes a whole lot of patience to walk that person back through. Like he's never used a stove.
I don't know how to use those. Like I told
Yeah.
Josh, I don't know how to drive a car. I don't know how to dance. I barely know how to use a phone. I gotta ask people for instructions. I don't know how to use the stove. And I went to my friend's house and she asked me, "Do you like to watch TV?" I said yes, but I was embarrassed to tell her, "Hey, I don't know how to use a remote. Can you please show me?" And
So just like prison, homeless shelters limit your reality.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I would say that homeless people they're not exactly missing the bus entirely. Most of them have had experience with cell phones. Most of them have cell phones. Some homeless people have laptops. Some of them have been in the workforce, and so like
Yeah,
me,
you're maybe one tier above, you know,
But-
as far as the freedom that you're allowed. But if you're any kind of a business owner or you're somebody like, for example, I was a victim of arson, so I would go to Home Depot and pay $4,000 in taxes buying like a wood package. So then I'm over here like, okay, let's see what services are available for somebody that has been victimized. Lo and behold, they're treating me like a dog, like I'm literally in a dog kennel. So it's like, okay, well, obviously I'm pretty pissed off about the money that I've spent as a taxpayer. And if this is what I've been paying for, then, then I've got a serious problem,
I would say that this comes back to being homeless. Start with the word home, okay? Homeless people don't have a home. They don't have a base. They don't have a closet. They don't have a kitchen. They don't have a refrigerator. They don't have a bathroom. So everything that a homeless person does as a daily routine is extremely hard. I can tell you that it's been my experience that this is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And I'm 62 years old. I've owned homes, I've owned businesses, I've run businesses. That was nothing compared to being homeless. Homeless is hard. It is extremely hard. And it's not just physically hard, it's emotionally hard. It takes it out of you like you cannot believe. I'm in shock at the amount of energy, brain energy that I expend trying to just do basic things. It's hard.
And homeless shelters don't make it easier.
No, they don't. They don't. They just all they're doing is shuffling you from one place to another. I mean, it's been my experience that there's two problems in homelessness. Okay, and this is going to be a problem that's going to get worse because of AI. As we get more homeless people, and as there are fewer jobs,
Good segue.
as there are fewer jobs, this problem is going to compound quickly. In fact, I predict in 3 years that we're going to be overwhelmed with homeless people.
Yeah,
But
and that
this-
kind of goes into why I chose to do the homeless industrial complex and kind of rush it through, was because well, one, I've been the victim of arson, so I was actually in a position to do this, and to do it very authentically. And number two is that the reasons why it's such a big thing typed into Google, if you look at the Google searches and stuff like that, a lot of people, they're in a situation where okay, you have an apartment and you have to make 3 times the rent, and then the cost and the inflation's going up. So they literally, if they lose their apartment, they cannot get into another apartment. So they're typing in how's the
well, inflation is actually
well,
making
well,
people
let
homeless.
me finish my thought.
Yeah.
So they're actually typing this into Google because they see themselves as someone that might have to use these facilities, might have to use these services. So with Project Phoenix and the great people at Vocal, they were trying to cut the housing budget by 40%. So so we had brought people up, and we talked about the people that were going to be put out on the streets. And I mean, this poor boy was he was about 28, had the mental capacity of about a 5-year-old, and he was just saying, I don't want to be homeless. I need a home. And I'm getting redder and redder and redder. And finally, I grab the mic. I'm the last one to speak, and I tell them about basically catching members of the Texas government engaging in what could simply be described as treason. And then so basically I bring that up, and then guess what happens? They give us the money. So it's like these people, what they respect and understand is people that will tell the truth, and they're very pragmatic.
I find the toughest part of this conversation is that there is a lot of money out there for homeless people, and the fact that it's
What kind of money are we talking about?
well, I'm talking about there's a lot of money, not just from private donations,
Yeah.
not just from cities, not just but you add it all up, there's a lot of money.
What kind of number per person
But exactly,
year?
how are they using that money? There's no audit of that. There's just like the rest of government, we're not allowed to actually investigate these people and see how they're spending their money. And if you did, it would make you sick, because
Yeah,
there's
38,000 per homeless person per.
let me tell you
year.
something, with $38,000, I could have changed my life.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
We changed the life of Mr. Valero.
Oh yeah, I've made his place in the Dominion a little bit easier. But
Yeah.
the truth is that this is what's going on across this country. It's not just Texas. It's the corruption that's involved in government as itself. We've gotten to a point in this country where you can't question a governmental organization. You can't say, "What are you doing? What are you doing with that money? How are you They want to say they're above scrutiny. They're above being audited. They want to act like everything's a national secret, and that's another thing, is that they secretize everything and make it a national interest. There's no doubt that
Who's they?
they well. There is the
Think tanks.
I would say there is the people that
well,
run the government behind the
So
government.
These would be your long range planning committees and your think tanks.
Yeah. Well,
And-
the elite, basically.
No, very specifically, there. If you want to look into it and not go down a rabbit hole, you would look at long range planning committees and think tanks.
You were talking earlier about how they have the whole homeless thing is organized like a prison, and
Yes.
that is
From
on a
its founding.
national level.
Yeah,
That's
from its
not
founding.
that's not just this town. It's a national level,
Uh,
and they're not really trying to help us. They put us through these little paces, these little things. They do little things, but there's nothing that's really that makes change, because it doesn't affect. It's not effective change.
Yeah, for example, like during sweeps, so they rely on like having this like sense of psychosis. Like, and the reason I use that word is because during sweeps they're gonna move a homeless encampment into a housing first, which like housing first really came about from people like Bokel, which are doing
Housing
the God's
First
work.
is a good program.
Yeah, so they get their grubby little fingers in there, and they do this thing called sweeps, where they will go and they will take they have all this pile of trash, and then they have your tent. They use your tent like it's a trash bag, and they'll grab just your tent, throw it away, knowing your ID's in there, knowing all your stuff is in there, because they want you in the program as long as possible. And and that's actually, so if you look at like groups like Cicero created these programs, and if you look at, and if you use the criminal code title 731.01 and you just read down under deprivation of theft, the first like 36 line items, you can cross them all out as part of their policy. And then whenever I confronted them, and I was like, who did this? And they're looking at it like kind of like crazy. And it's like, I know you didn't do this on purpose, but the problem is no one's gonna believe you.
I just had a sweep thing come through where I camp at, and
Oh, really?
yeah. And what really shocked me is they wouldn't tell me where I was going. They wouldn't tell me where I was going to be getting an apartment at. They wouldn't tell me anything, and it put up red flags in front of me. And I looked at them. I said, no, thank you, because I felt like that they were hurting me like a cat, like a cattle. All right.
Did anybody ever approach you for mental health resources?
I've been through Echo here
No,
in
I mean
Austin.
specifically with sweeps.
Not from a sweep. Yeah, kind of. Echo it. Sometimes they'll get people together and they go through these encampments, and they'll get people to sign up for what they were housing first, where they would pay the deposit.
Okay, well, the reason I'm asking is because according to the Americans with Disability Acts, that you have to make accommodations and they have to be reasonable. So if you're talking to a schizophrenic homeless person, for example, this one lady was schizophrenic. She was homeless. She thought the president bought her the bridge that she stayed at. And now you legally can't make her move. So they came in, and 8 armed officers came, and they took her belongings, and we had geolocation tags on there. Guess what? They didn't end up in the landfill. They end up at their apartments.
Well, let me ask you this, because I'm not as familiar with the mentally ill, but there's not much help in America for the mentally ill, and that's why these schizophrenics are all on the street. They take them to the hospital, and they hold them for 48 hours, give them some medications that they can't afford to buy the next month, and then they release them to the street, and they're just as schizophrenic as they were the day before.
And that's important. Like their family, first of all, their families, that's someone's brother or uncle or cousin or wife.
Yeah, they're humans.
And the fact that their family left them out on the street, and I've heard everything.
It's
like
a disgrace.
Yeah, schizophrenia starts to come in around age 25. And so the perfect opportunity for them to blame it on drugs. Like, I'm sorry, I've partied and I've gotten high a million times. I've never seen Santa Claus with sharp teeth and
yeah, me neither.
I've never thought that there was gnomes under. That's not a thing.
I've seen drugs. I've seen people who take drugs who it does change. Okay, and drugs don't always affect.
So they exacerbate underlying issues like schizophrenia. Right. And I'm not saying that a person suffering with schizophrenia should go smoke meth, because then they're going to go straight into psychosis.
Oh yeah, they do. They get psychotic.
If you think that if you're using drugs as just a reason to pretend that your cousin's not crazy, to pretend that your wife doesn't deserve to be deserves to be on the street, then you're just adding to the problem.
Let's talk about drugs just for a minute.
Well, hold on. What would need to change about homeless shelters for it to be a more positive reform?
I think that, first of all, you would need to do an evaluation of a person as you come in. You would need to assess where they're at, what skills they have, what level of help that's needed, and then act more appropriately rather than making these general
Oh yeah,
things.
okay. More specifically on what you're saying, they have to say, are they a veteran? If they're a veteran, put them in a place, pay for their shit. You know, unless you want to take up a gun and go fight for your country, then that's disgusting. That the fact that any veterans
Well,
on the
and that
street,
should be handled
yeah,
by the veteran
the
associate.
fact that any
You know,
veterans on the street is so disgusting. Like we don't deserve anything we have because of that. Now, number two would be your crazy people, and you know, we should be doing the first of
What
all.
could be done better in the homeless shelter
Like he said
to have more
earlier,
positive
Like
reform?
he said earlier, find a shelter and evaluate every individual that's going in like they do in prison. That evaluate every individual that goes in like they do in prison. See where he's at mentally and physically, and see if he needs any
Oh yeah, because
mental help or
yeah.
anything that could do for him. Because you got people out here that are schizophrenic. They just out of control. You know what I mean? So you
Yeah.
put them in a shelter. Just
You
like
gotta know the problem to find the solution.
You gotta find
Now,
the problem.
Well, that's why
You gotta know the problem to
prison
find the
industrial
solution.
Yeah,
complex
because
would
he's
do it
right.
better.
You living in a shelter with 80 other people. You can't sleep comfortable because you sleeping with 79 other people that you ain't even know nothing about. You know what I mean? You gotta sleep with one eye open. You know what I mean? Because you might have some people that's schizophrenic, out of control.
Murders.
Yeah, murders,
think-
not knowing what they're gonna do to you. You know what I mean? So just like this man said right here, you need to evaluate them, see where they at before you allow them into your place.
And in order to do that, you can't look at them like a statistic.
right? No, you can't group. I mean, we're looking at probably 30% of the population of America being homeless in a couple of years. And with those kind of numbers, what are you going to group them all? Is they're all crazies, or are they all lazy, or they're all this or all that? Because that's completely
Yeah, and if the
inaccurate.
people-
Well, no, Kevin, I just made it illegal.
Well, and you just said something that's actually happening, and this is very troublesome to me. I mean, when I started seeing this happening, it really bothers me to my core. But this country has ignored the homeless are the canary in the coal mine. Okay, when we start to get homeless, it's because something's broken in our system, and when we have mass amounts of people homeless, that's a complete breakdown and failure in our system. And what are they doing? They're passing laws that are basically making it illegal to be poor, and the laws about no sleeping in the car, about no sleeping on the sidewalks, about no doing this. They're trying to herd us into some kind of facility that
the
is
Foghorn
inhuman.
Leghorns freaking plantation where you make
And let me tell you
36
something.
an hour.
Home. The worst thing about we haven't even talked about yet is employment. How do you pull yourself out of the hole when employers won't hire homeless people? Okay,
Yeah, that's a good point because I'd like to add, like in the case of Austin, Texas, most people are shocked to find out that over 20,000 felons are released into Travis County. Now, from just a pragmatic perspective, you would know that the entry-level job market would be completely tapped out. Now, and if you add the entry-level job market for felons, then that's completely so. So now you're starting to get a picture of their.
And you did 38 years, Carlos, and you just got dropped out. And like you said it yourself, if it wasn't for Denise, you would be homeless. So how hard is it for you to get a job even though you even have a house?
Man, it's hard because I've been going places looking for jobs, and they tell me, man, we ain't hiring right now. Eventually, I don't know if they lying to me or not, but I went to Ace Hardware, I went to Walmart, I went to apply for the city of Austin, HEB on Palmer.
Car wash.
Yeah,
You
at the
think
car
having
wash right there on
20,000, competitors
the
might
car
make it
wash.
hard?
well, HEB
And,
won't hire felons. They don't
right
hire
there
people.
on research by Target, and they never call me. You know what I mean? They told me I put my application in, everything. They still ain't calling
You
me.
know, we talk
So
about.
I think I don't know if they discriminating because I did 38 years, or they just ain't trying to give me a chance to prove myself. You know
Well,
what I
I
mean?
think it's because you're going to be going up against 20,000 other people that are exiting the prison industrial complex.
it's deeper than
So,
that.
so I mean, that's a lot of people to compete against.
Look,
Yes.
I can tell you this. I'm 60. First of all, I'm 62. Okay, and I had a 35-year career in corporate America, and I've owned corporations and run businesses. I've hired people, so I know. The truth is that discrimination in hiring happens everywhere. Okay, you can say that we didn't do that. We don't discriminate, but they'll tell you that they're not hiring when they are hiring. That's to discourage you from applying, and they'll even interview you and string you along because you
No,
have
that's the
applied.
worst. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the worst. This is what's going on systemic, is that once you're labeled, whether it's labeled a felon or labeled homeless, you become unemployable. Okay.
So Kevin, you've seen both sides. You went from a millionaire to now currently living in a treehouse.
Well, yeah, but you lose money faster than you make it. Trust me. Anyway, the,
But that gives you perspective.
it gives me perspective to understand that I'm not just fighting a bad economy. I'm not just fighting that we are in the process of shedding jobs at every company in America. Okay, we are shedding jobs. We are closing down locations. We're making it so that fewer people do more work for longer hours for less money. Now, everything is working against us in this, from inflation. The price of everything's up. I mean, you think you're poor and you have a job. Try having no income and living with inflation.
Yeah.
You would not even understand what hard is.
So I even found out through my investigations, I found out some information that's really at the forefront of this issue. And this is really why everybody needs to work together to fight against this. And there's things called red flag laws, like ERPO, LRERPO, and so they'll take certain designations, like if you've ever stayed in a shelter, which all three of us, he's been in the prison industrial complex, we would be called red flag. Now, now if you live in now who else gets red flagged? By where you live, you will be red flagged. You will be red flagged for living in a certain jurisdiction, in a certain high crime area, and you're going into a computer system that's if you get pulled over, they're going to be looking through your car. If you're applying for a grant or a loan, you won't get that grant or a loan. So people
credit's not available to us.
Yeah, so
It's not available.
the credit won't be available. So really, like this is set in place by like Cicero, Palantir, Pegasus, Celebrite. All these systems are being used, and it seems
against
like,
us.
yeah, it seems like they're using Revelations or
They're amassing data on us.
J.R.R. Tolkien book as like a scaffolding for like setting up this panopticon. So if people don't fight now, they're not going to get a chance to fight.
We're on that cusp right now of losing our independence, our freedom, and everything in this country.
The ability to fight back.
Yes, and we're not going to have any ability to fight back if we don't stop it now. If we don't get people from a ground roots level saying we're going to stand up for our rights, our freedom of speech, our freedom to assemble, our freedom to, and this needs to be a government by the people, for the people, not a government by the corporations, for the corporations.
Like, for example, our methodology is Operation Divine Warrior. And Divine Warrior, so we study the law and we do not break any laws. I still have to have my face covered because I've been attacked. I've been jumped by 5 people. I've had my apartment burned down. I've had my house burned down. I've had my other house kicked door. I've attempted stabbing, and that was all this year. That's 1 year.
It seems like what's really happened over my lifetime is, and I didn't really recognize it until I was about 40 something, is that corporations, we say that we're a democracy, but in truth we're not. And the reason I say we're not is because when you go to vote, you're voting for this bought and paid for fool or this bought and paid for fool, but they're both bought and paid for by corporations. People do not donate to people's the legislatures or your state senator or anything. It's all done by corporations. The corporations are the one that put up the candidates. They own the candidates.